Isolating a record as the only record in the found set is a common scenario, especially when previewing. I do it all the time. Unlike printing, Preview has no option to display the current record versus the found set like you find when you print. If I go to Print and look inside here and show all of the options here, which is where? Show details, there we go. Haven't looked in here in a long time. You'll see current record versus records being browsed. You don't have that option in Preview. When you go to Preview, it's going to show the first page, which will include at least the first record in the found set, possibly not the one you're actually viewing. So you may have to skip through some pages to find it, to find that record you want to see. So being able to isolate the record in the found set can allow you to preview that record whenever you want to. Let's show you how to find this example file. If we go into the databasepros.com website and click the resources, just type in isolate teen, hit the find button, and there you go, isolate a record. Great little tip. It's an old one, so it's in .fp7 format. But again, a lot of these old files that have persisted throughout the years are the ones that really count. They're really important and good tips. They haven't really changed at all. There's nothing you can do about this. So I want people who are still using FileMaker 7, believe it, there are some people out there using, let's say, FileMaker 11, which is the FP7 format. I want them to have access to these files as well. It's a simple drag onto FileMaker, whatever version you have, it'll convert it and it'll work just the same. So once you get that file, it'll look like this. And let's talk about how this works, how to isolate a record in the most basic format. So we're going to go into the script workspace, and you'll see a bunch of scripts here. Here's the most basic version of this. Show all records, omit record, and show omitted only. Let me show you that manually so you get what's going on. I'm going to show all records here. Move over to record 14, or record 10. Maybe omit some records. Then maybe move over to this one. And I want to isolate number 8, which is the text has H on it. So what I do is I need to show all records. And notice when I show all records, I'm still on H. I haven't moved from that record. Then I'm going to omit that record that I'm on out of the found set. So now it's everything but the record I want. And then I simply show omitted only, and it reverses it. Now I have that record isolated. That's a pretty common thing to do, especially in a new window. You don't necessarily want to isolate the record in the current window because somebody might have a found set there. So when they click on your button and it does this series of steps and then previews or something like that, you don't want them to lose their found set. You should do it in a new window. So that's a little tip that's not really covered inside this example file. So that seems great. I mean, what could go wrong with it? Well, the problem is if you're in a multi-user solution, you can kind of see this up here inside the comment here. It says this works great in a single user scenario but fails in a multi-user scenario when records can be added or deleted by another user. And it's not totally true. It's usually in systems where there's a lot of people adding and deleting records. And why does that happen? Well, when somebody adds a new record, it goes into the omitted set of records. So it doesn't add it to your found set that you're using right now. It would mess things up. It goes into the omitted found set that you have at that moment. It's still there, and you can still find it, but it's not in your current found set. FileMaker doesn't want to mess things up for you. So it puts it in the omitted set. Hence the problem. We're omitting records here. So if somehow in a solution that's getting a lot of records being added, let's say there's some kind of phone call center and they're entering small records all the time, whatever it might be, or maybe it's a very popular website or something, records getting added all the time, this can fail because what's going to happen is you're going to omit the record at the same time somebody's creating a new record, and you're going to end up with 2 records in your found set, and that's not something that you want. You don't want that to occur. So in order to prevent that, we have to have solutions that get around it. So hopefully that makes sense so far, is that you can't guarantee in a really a solution that has a lot of traffic in it, where a lot of records are being added, you can't guarantee that this technique's always going to work. I wouldn't worry about it in basic scenarios. If you're not adding another record, a lot of records, and you're not, or if you're a single user, which is very uncommon these days, this will work fine. And there's an easy solution actually that works in most situations. But let's first talk about deleting records. That's also another issue. If you somebody deletes the record, and this is an unusual situation, but theoretically it could happen. If somebody deletes the record that you're trying to isolate, what's going to happen? Well, this is not going to work. You're not going to be able to get this to work, so you've got to consider that in the whole solution as well. Multi-user presents a lot of different problems that single user does not. So here's the first solution. Simply put everything into a loop and exit when we have a found count of 1. And keep repeating that until we have a found count of 1. That's going to work great in all situations except in the situation where the record's deleted. You need some type of exit loop if to make sure that it exited, and you have to set some variables to the record ID or the serial number or something like that. Say, hey, exit this, we can't, somebody deleted the record. But again, that's unusual, and this should handle most situations here. So even just going this step further will do what you want because it will eventually isolate that record. Now, here's another one down here. I'm not going to cover this one. It's more complicated, and it doesn't handle record deletion. This is the best solution right here, the one that handles every scenario. It's more complicated, though. So what it does is you save the record ID. You could use a serial number if you want. It doesn't really matter. Anything that's unique. You try doing the shoal records, the 3 steps that isolate it. Then you go to the first record, and you enter a loop, and you try to exit if the found count equals 0. Because what will happen is if the found count is 0, then we need to exit this. That means it's been deleted, right? So that's the issue we're worried about. Otherwise, it'll say, does the record equal the record ID, or does a record serial number equal the serial number field? I mean, you can do it either way you want. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next record and exit after last. Otherwise, I'm going to omit records. So you're getting rid of those records if they're not equal to the one that you're trying to isolate. And then once you've done that and you've exited, you're going to go ahead and get the found count equals 1. You say OK, or you say the original record was deleted, or that's where you test for that. So this is just an exit script they're assuming here, this is a script I got from Greg Lane at Soliant Consulting. Really smart guy. He's planning on making this a subscript, so we're passing this script result back to the main script, because you might want to isolate records in a bunch of different places, right? So might as well make it a modular script so it's centralized, so you don't have to keep writing this code over and over. So that's the idea there, is that depending on the result, you know what happened to that, to that isolation, whether it worked or not, whether somebody deleted the record. But again, really, most cases this is going to be sufficient. Just the basic shoal records, this is usually what I use. But keep it in the back of your mind. Do we have a system where a lot of people are adding records? Move to this. And then if you're really concerned where there's a lot of deletion going, and I don't usually offer deletion. Most people are saying, hey, we're not deleting records, because most situations, if you delete a record, you're actually removing that record that's related to some other table. So let's say if you're in an invoicing solution, you won't delete a product, because if you delete the product record, then all the old invoices don't show that product. What you do is you say that product's not available anymore, and you put some programming in there so you can't choose it anymore from pop-up menus and things like that. So you don't delete records usually, so that's why I'm not so worried about the record deletion portion. But it could happen, so consider this method if the record deletion. Now, if you want to take a look at some other methods, which I don't necessarily recommend it, I wanted to do a full gamut here, give you all the possible choices, but really it's this choice, or this choice, in my opinion, which are the best solutions to this problem. But again, you probably most of the time only use this, but that knowledge can save you from a problem. And that's how Greg Lane solved it, because he knows records were not, script wasn't working the right way, and he sat down and thought about it and goes, why is this happening? Oh, we're putting the new records, which is the most common scenario, into the omitted set, which is ruining the script. So pretty cool little thing to know about FileMaker and how it works. Even if you don't ever isolate a record, it's nice to know that those new records in a multi-user scenario go into the omitted set for everybody that's connected to the database.